Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Kangaroo Court Uncut podcast. My name's Rob Cameron, and with me, as always, Shane Dowling. Hello, and how are you?
Very good. Yourself, Rob?
Big news, I suppose, in politics this week. There's a bit around, but I'd like to go back on an old one with you, and that is Penny Wong, who has been under a lot of attack from the crossbench and the Greens lately about um, well, let's call it her credibility in Parliament under severe questioning. She's struggling a little bit and gone from one of the more popular members of the Australian Labor Party government to now someone who's under a lot of pressure.
Yeah, look, I've been following her for quite a while. Well, a long time, I suppose, like same as everyone. But in recent times, her performance in the Senate, I've been publishing videos, and it's predominantly the Greens that have been questioning her and putting tough questions to her, and she just doesn't like it. And she fires right up and starts to become what you'd have to call is abusive. She belittles them, and her body language shows contempt for him for daring to ask tough questions. And the latest video, which I published this week, was in relation to the proposed gas tax, where we're meant to raise $17 billion. We're currently raising very little from the gas companies who are exporting our gas overseas. And the Greens and others have proposed a gas levy. I think it's 25%, but it'd raise $17 billion. And those questions were put to her by one of the Green senators, and she flared up again. She ducked and she weaved, and by itself it's bad, but she's been doing that on a lot of issues, especially Gaza, Palestine, and the Israelis' conduct in Gaza. The UN has called it out for being genocide and done that again this week in relation to children, accusing Israel of committing genocide against children. And when those sorts of questions are put to Penny Wong, she ducks and weaves. So I did an article this week in relation to the gas tax, and the senator there was Senator Steph Hodgins-May, a Green senator who put questions to Penny Wong. And once again, she ducked, she weaved, became abusive, not as abusive as she has done in the past. I think someone's tapped her on the shoulder and said, look, you need to tone that down a bit, the abuse. But once again, she's done it. And like you said, she used to be very popular. If you look from 2013 until 2022, when the Labor Party were in opposition, Penny Wong sort of gained a real cult following for asking tough questions in the Senate, asking tough questions of the then government, the Liberal National Party government and coalition, and also in Senate estimates. She'd ask the tough questions, hold them to account. But as soon as she got into power in 2022, when the Labor Party won government, it's like she says, corruption? What's corruption? I've never heard of the word. And whenever she's asked questions about government corruption or alleged corruption, she ducks and weaves. And she's a real liability for the government now. I remember Prime Minister Julia Gillard. She was despised by a lot of people within the Labor Party because they regarded her as stabbing Kevin Rudd in the back. So even people in the Labor Party despised her. And Penny Wong is getting that same sort of vibe now, where people in the Labor Party are criticising her heavily for her stance on Israel and the Palestinians. I think I published a video a few months ago where Penny Wong said, in relation to Australia supplying weapons parts to Israel, that we're supplying non-lethal parts. So non-lethal weapon parts for the F-35 fighter jets. How are they non-lethal? It's absolutely ridiculous. So she's winding up the voters in her responses. She's looking ridiculous. And she's done that again with the gas. That's $17 billion a year that Australians could be using, or the Australian government could be using on housing or the food crisis, or not the food crisis, but the cost of living crisis. They could reduce gas bills for Australians if they raise that money, but they're refusing to do so. And I think there's two quotes, and I'll read them out, that Senator Hodgins-May said as part of her question. She said, it's a remarkable coincidence that what Labor says is best for Australians is always what's best for multinational gas corporations. What a coincidence. And another quote is, she says, Labor is working for the gas industry, working for their big donors. Now, that's something you won't hear the Labor supporters say online. They'll quote the Greens a fair bit, but you won't see them quoting those quotes because it really stings. Now, I published that video of Senator Hodgins May. In the end of the video, there's David Shoebridge also holding Penny Wong to account, which he has a long history of doing. So it's worth going to that article on my website and you can watch that video. It's embedded in there. You can also watch the video about Senator Wong talking about Australia supplying weapons part that are non-lethal to Israel.
Shane, the interesting thing about this is that most of the comments that you've made then about the attack in Parliament, we're only really seeing them on social media because what she's saying is probably supported by both the two major oppositions to the government, being One Nation and the Liberal Party. They have similar policy. So we're really only seeing this stuff from independent media like yourself and social media where Senator Wong is under attack because she's actually quite supportive of the general mass of the parliamentary population.
Old media have dropped the ball. Old media now are very reliant on the federal government for a lot of their revenue. The News Media Bargaining Code, where the federal government have passed legislation forcing Google and other social media websites to pay the old media companies millions of dollars per year. So the old media have dropped the ball and they don't push as hard as they once did, especially on issues that would potentially embarrass the government heavily. And that's why they don't publish these sorts of things, and it's only new media that are doing it. And that's why old media are dying. They're shooting themselves in the foot. On one hand, they're reliant on the government for revenue, for millions of dollars per year in revenue. But if they hold the government to account too much, they're worried the government will not enforce that like they should, or not like they should, like they're prepared to. At the moment, Google are handing over hundreds of millions of dollars a year, whether it's 100 or 200, I'm not too sure, to Australian media companies in total. But Facebook they've dropped off. Now, the old media companies are reliant on the government and hoping the government will force Facebook to start paying again. So, in one hand, they're meant to hold the government to account. On the other hand, the government is their paymaster, is their employer almost. So it's a very difficult situation for them, and they just don't report the truth, the facts like they should. And it's not just that biased there because they're on the payroll, but it's also because they're sacking so many journalists. They can't cover every story as well, so that's why they miss some of the stories. Seven West Media just sacked, or in the process of sacking, 250 to 300 people. They haven't set an exact figure, but they've set the ballpark figure at 250 to 300 people they're going to sack, make redundant. Now, out of that, it's probably going to be 50 to 100 journalists. The rest will be backroom staff. But that's a lot of journalists that take off the street, and that's happening every year, not just with Seven West Media. Channel 9 are doing it every year, pretty much. News Corp. So they're missing a lot of stories because of that, and they're missing a lot of stories because they're reliant on the government for revenue, and they don't want to upset them too much.
I think that's a very good reason if people are watching this podcast and are taken by the work that Shane is doing behind the scenes, to make sure you spread it as much as possible, because this type of story isn't making it into the mainstream. And the only way we can get people to understand what's happening is the work that you and others do, Shane. So it's a commendation again, and we please ask people to engage with this. You can do your own investigation behind it, but there's not too much doubt, for all the reasons Shane just explained, that this type of story remains hidden from mainstream media, which is very disappointing.
It is, and I'll give myself a quick plug while we're at it. Been running a campaign over the last 30-odd weeks to get 200 new monthly supporters. We've got 12 to go, and all the details will be at the end of this video. So if you want to support the website, Kangaroo Court of Australia website, YouTube channel, and this podcast, listen till the end, and all the details will be there.
Shane, the other interesting story this week is the two independent members of Parliament that have moved to start up their own party, Community Strong Australia, and it sort of landed interestingly among the independent groups, some not wanting a part of it at all. Some have said they're going to go back and consult with their community to see what they think. But it's certainly going to put a little bit of a change on the landscape. They've got another 100 days to make the application for the new party, where they've got to put through all their principles and values. That'll be involving community consultation, but it really could change the landscape, Shane.
Look, I think it was on the card. Well, it was on the cards. People were talking about it, exactly how it was going to pan out. No one knows. They were all meant to be talking about it, the community independents to some degree. And they obviously had discussions, most of them, if not all of them. And two of them, Zali Steggall and Allegra Spender, they're the ones who have set up the party. The party's titled Community Strong Australia. Been a little bit of criticism of it already because the acronym is CSA, which stands for Child Sexual Abuse. So I think that name might change a fraction because people are complaining about it already. But the party was always on the cards because new parties are going to have to step up. At the moment, the reason One Nation are getting a lot of the support is because they're basically the only alternative that a lot of people see as being familiar, someone they'd park their vote at. There's the Greens. There's plenty of people out there, say Liberal supporters, National supporters, who won't support the Greens for whatever reason. They see them too left-wing. So the only real option was One Nation. So there's opportunities for new parties to start up. And obviously the Zali Steggall and Allegra Spender have decided, okay, we're going to set up a new party. They've done that for two reasons. Number one, they want some influence in the Senate. They're sitting back and saying, okay, while we're in the lower house, we just don't have that much influence, whereas if we can pick up a few seats in the Senate, we're going to have more influence, one. And two, because the federal government have changed the election spending laws where independents are limited to how much they can spend, whereas a party has more ability to spend a lot more under the new laws. So the government have basically tried to silence them, and they've decided to set up that new party to circumvent that, where independents are not limited. But that's still under review by the High Court. The former Melbourne community independent, Teals, Zoe Daniel, she's a lead litigant in a High Court appeal against those new laws. So that's still to be determined by the High Court. Maybe that's why some of those Teals haven't joined the new party. Maybe they've decided, okay, let's wait and see what happens there, because not all the Teals, I think two, have come out and said they're definitely not joining the party, and another couple have said they're considering after consultation with their voters and supporters. So one of the things is, at the moment, it's just been announced, so it's really hard to get a grip on exactly how it will and won't work. All the details aren't out there. Who's going to actually lead the party? Well, that's unknown. So until all those questions are answered, it's really hard to have a strong viewpoint on the party.
And it's interesting where they sit too, because they're probably going to attract more right-leaning Green voters and moderate Liberal Party voters, which is about where the principles and values of the majority of those independents that are currently sitting in Parliament lie. So it does give the voter who is disgruntled with the two major party system that have, as you said, have currently run for One Nation because there's no other option, it could give them somewhere to go. So that particular party might start off with a pretty good base based on the high profile of Steggall and Spender.
Look, it's not. It could give them a place to go. It will give them a place to go. I think there's two things there. How well will they do? I've seen a report that suggested, okay, at the last federal election, I think they got 70% of the required. I think you need roughly 14.5% of the vote to get a senator up in any state. Every federal election, there's 6 senators up for re-election. Each state has 12 senators, but every election, there's 6 senators up for re-election because they get 6 years each. And they need roughly 14.5% or 14.9% of the vote to get a senator elected. And I've seen the report, it said in New South Wales, they got 70% of the required vote. In Western Australia, they got 40 or 50% or whatever it was. But that doesn't factor in the fact that's only in the seats where they ran. So if they got 60 or 70% of the vote in New South Wales in just the seats they ran, there's a lot of people in a lot of seats that didn't have a community independents who would have voted for them. So I think there's a good chance they'll pick up 2 or 3 or maybe 4 or 5 Senate seats if they do have quality candidates in every state. That's one issue. The other issue that I think is worth mentioning is I think they've hit the starter's gun for other small parties to be set up, because there's a lot of Liberal parties and national parties. Well, not a lot, because there's not that many in government, but there's a few there that keep on leaking to the media that aren't actually happy with their current leadership, and they see their current leadership taking them into oblivion. So I think there's a very, very good chance that you'll get 2 or 3 Liberals and/or Nationals setting up their own parties in the not too distant future, because their own leadership in the National and Liberal Party, that's going to come to a head soon too. A lot of people in the Liberal Party aren't happy with Angus Taylor. They'll get rid of him and they'll replace him. And whoever the replacement is, other people in the Liberal Party probably won't like it. And they'll probably consider setting up their own party. They're looking at the Teals. There's only taken 2 of them to set up a party. So it's not too hard to get 2 Liberals or 2 Nationals to set up a party, and they'll be thinking the exact same thing. So that could be on the cards. I reckon the next 6 to 12 months, you'll see a breakaway party set up from the Liberals and the Nationals.
Yeah, I think you could possibly be right, because I know from my own conversations just in social environments, Shane, that a lot of rusted on Liberal voters are really disillusioned with where the party's going. I think they've been spooked by One Nation and have walked away from their own values. So I think you're quite right. If a couple of them were brave enough to step aside, they'd probably get a good chunk of established Liberal Party voters that would go with them.
Well, it might be a strategic move too, because they're leaving it open to Zali Steggall and Allegra Spender to take that 2, 3, 4% of the Liberal Party voters who aren't happy. But by setting up their own breakaway, they can sort of potentially negate that to some degree, although they'll be thinking they can anyhow. Whether they can or not, it's a different story. But they'll think, okay, we set up a breakaway party, we can negate that. So it's on for young and old in all the political parties, the major ones, that Labor, Liberal and National. They're all trying to work out how they navigate the new political landscape, with One Nation getting a big chunk of the vote. I think one thing is for sure, that One Nation will lose at least a little bit of their vote to the new party. How much, I don't know. No one knows. Community Strong Australia. I think they need a better name myself, and wouldn't take much to change it, but they might abbreviate that to just Community Strong or Community Australia or whatever. I just don't like the name at all, but we'll see what happens there.
I think what's interesting, Shane, is that this particular model of community independence have been very strong in saying that they discuss things with the community and respond to community. And for that reason, I think we will see a name change. We might see a little bit of directional change as they go back and negotiate and wait for commentary. So by the time their 100 days comes up, you might see a slightly different and more appealing model. And there may even be 1 or 2 more of the sitting independents that go along with Steggall and Spender and make it a little bit stronger. What's interesting is the Liberal Party and National Party have been branding these community independents as green-like or left-wing, but when you really look at their policies and what they stand for, they are very much traditional Liberal Party style policy platforms. So I think if they're able to get it out there in the community a bit more, I think the take up for them could be a lot larger than many people think.
Oh, for sure. One of the things there, people are trying to say they're going to lose a lot of their support because they went to the election as community independents. Now they formed a political party. But if everything was equal, as it was the last election, May 2025, they probably would lose a fair bit of support. But I don't think they will now, because the Liberal Party vote has tanked. So their overall support, I suspect, has gone way up in their own electorates, as the Liberal Party supporters have jumped ship. I think in their own electorates, not many of them would have jumped ship to One Nation. They more would have been would have been more likely to jump ship to them. So even if they do lose some of their supporters, they're still probably going to be ahead of where they were because of the supporters they've gained from everyone deserting the Liberal Party. In the latest poll I seen last night, the Liberal Party have tanked again, another couple percentage points, down around 15%. It's pretty much telling the last person to turn off the light when they leave scenario. One Nation have dropped 1 or 2 percentage points, which they're going to fluctuate. That doesn't mean a great deal. I think it'll be interesting. The next poll or two won't really matter, but a couple of polls after that, you might get an indication of whether Community Strong Australia has actually had any cut through. The big challenge for Zoe Steggall and Allegra Spenders is to get enough publicity, enough promotion, and whether they can get enough to actually climb up the polls, I don't know. That's going to be the challenge for them. But if they do and they start getting some traction in the polls, that might encourage the other community independents to join them as well. So there's a lot of issues there that are just all unknowns, but over time we'll get a bit of indication of where they're at.
We certainly will, and even as quick as next week when we catch up again, there could be movement in this place. But I sense with the way you do your work, there might be another issue that you find between now and then, and we look forward to seeing more of you on your website. And you can catch me, Rob Cameron, at 94.7 The Pulse in Geelong. Just check on website for my radio show, and we'll be back next week for Kangaroo Court Uncut podcast. Shane Dowling, thank you very much again for your time.
Thanks, Rob, and see you next week. Thank you for watching the video. And I'm 100% crowdfunded from viewers like yourself. And as I said in the video, I've been running a campaign to make sure I can keep on doing the work I do with the Kangaroo Court of Australia website, YouTube channel, and a new podcast you just watched. I'll read that out to you. 31 weeks ago, I launched a campaign with a simple goal: find 200 new monthly supporters so I can keep doing this work as a fully independent journalist, running this website and YouTube channel, and now podcast, without corporate backing or paywalls. Since then, 188 wonderful people have stepped up and become monthly supporters. That's huge. Thank you. We're now at 12 to go. If you've been enjoying the work and aren't yet supporting monthly, I'd be incredibly grateful if you consider joining them. Here's the situation. Like most independent journalists, I'm basically a one-person small business. Right now, a lot of us are feeling the squeeze, just like many small businesses and households are. To stay afloat and keep bringing you the reporting I do, I need roughly 200 or more people, or 12 now, chipping in whatever they can comfortably afford each month. Anything from $3 to $100 or whatever works for your budget makes a real difference. There's no lock-in. You can cancel or adjust at any time. If that feels doable right now, you can see all the donation options on the donations page on my website, and I'll put a link to the donations page below this video on YouTube. Your support, whether it's a monthly donation or one-off donation or just sharing my work, what helps keep independent voices like this one alive. Please do your bit and help shine a light on corruption and share this video on social media. And please hit the like and subscribe button and notification button on YouTube. That way you get notified when I publish new videos. Other than that, thank you for your time and have a good day.